When Marcus Hayes rejected his third promotion in 4 years, his new CEO demanded to know why. His answer would change both their lives forever. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Financial Group hummed their monotonous song as Marcus packed his briefcase at exactly 5:25, the same ritual he'd performed every weekday for the past 4 years. Around him, colleagues lingered at their desks, pretending to work while actually scrolling through social media or planning their evening happy hour excursions. Marcus never joined them. He'd perfected the art of being present without being noticed, a ghost in business casual who showed up, did exceptional work, and vanished precisely on schedule. Victoria Sterling stood at her office window on the executive floor, watching the parking lot 3 stories below. She'd been CEO for 6 months now, the youngest person to ever hold that position at Sterling Financial, and she'd spent most of that time trying to understand the machine she'd inherited. Every employee had a pattern, a rhythm she could predict and analyze. Every employee except one. Marcus Hayes appeared in the parking lot at 5:32 like clockwork. Not 5:31, not 5:33, always 5:32, accounting for the elevator ride and the walk across the lobby. Victoria had been tracking it for 3 weeks now, and the precision unnerved her. People weren't that consistent unless something drove them to be. She'd pulled his file last month. 4 years of perfect performance reviews, 0 mistakes in quarterly reports. Clients specifically requested him for their accounts because he actually listened, actually cared, actually followed through. 3 times the company had offered him team leader positions. 3 times he'd declined without explanation. Most people at Sterling would sacrifice limbs for those opportunities. Marcus Hayes walked away from them like they meant nothing. Victoria watched his car pull out of the parking lot, heading east toward the residential district. She didn't know where he went. She didn't know what mattered more to him than career advancement and financial security. But she intended to find out. The next morning, Tuesday, Victoria arrived at 7 as usual. Marcus's desk sat empty in the far corner of the 3rd floor, tucked between 2 filing cabinets like an afterthought. No family photos, no coffee mug with a witty slogan, no calendar with vacation days circled in red. Just a computer monitor, a keyboard, and a small cactus that looked like it had survived more through neglect than care. She walked past it slowly, pretending to review something on her tablet. The desk was clean, almost obsessively so. Not a single personal item to indicate who Marcus Hayes was outside these walls. Janet from HR caught her in the elevator an hour later, clutching a stack of personnel files. "Morning, Miss Sterling. These are the quarterly reviews you requested." Victoria took them, flipping through until she found Marcus's file. 4 years. Not once had he called in sick. Not once had he been late. His performance scores were perfect, but the comments from previous managers all said the same thing in different words: competent, reliable, distant. "Janet, do you know anything about Marcus Hayes? Personally, I mean." Janet's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and discomfort. "Marcus? He's quiet, keeps to himself. I don't think anyone really knows him. He doesn't do the social stuff, you know? Christmas parties, team building, happy hours. Just comes in, works, leaves." "Does he have family? Friends here?" "I honestly don't know. He never talks about his personal life. Some of the others have made jokes about it. They call him the robot." Not to his face, obviously. Victoria handed the files back, her jaw tight. "Thank you, Janet." She spent the rest of the morning in meetings, budget projections, market analysis, and whispered rumors about Sterling's vulnerability to acquisition. The financial sector was consolidating. Mid-sized firms like theirs were prime targets. Victoria had been brought in partly to make Sterling more attractive to potential buyers, though the board hadn't said so explicitly. Every employee would need to justify their value when that day came. Her mind kept drifting back to that empty desk on the 3rd floor. By afternoon, she'd made a decision. She needed to talk to Marcus directly, to understand what drove someone to make themselves invisible, especially when visibility might soon become a matter of survival. At 4:45, she left her office and walked down to the third floor. Marcus sat at his desk, fingers moving across his keyboard with practiced efficiency. He wore the same thing he always wore: khaki slacks, a button-down shirt in some neutral color, sensible shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. Victoria approached slowly, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Marcus didn't look up until she stopped directly beside his desk. "Mr. Hayes, do you have a moment?" He glanced up, and for a split second, Victoria saw something flicker in his expression. Wariness, maybe, or resignation. "Of course, Miss Sterling. What can I help you with?" "My office. Now, please." She didn't wait for his response, just turned and walked toward the elevator. Behind her, she heard the soft sound of his chair rolling back, his footsteps following at a measured pace. They rode the elevator in silence. Victoria kept her expression neutral, watching the floor numbers climb. Marcus stood with his hands clasped in front of him, perfectly still, perfectly controlled. When they reached her office, she gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." He sat, his posture straight but not rigid, waiting. Victoria opened his file on her desk, though she'd already memorized every page. "I've been reviewing your performance history. 4 years here. Impeccable work. Clients love you. Your technical skills are exceptional." "Thank you." "You've been offered 3 promotions in that time. Team leader positions. More responsibility, significant pay increases, better benefits. You turned down all 3. Marcus's expression didn't change. "Yes." "Why?" "I prefer my current role." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "That's not an answer. That's a deflection. Try again." Something shifted in Marcus's face, a tiny crack in the carefully maintained facade. "The team leader position requires extended hours. Late meetings, weekend availability. I leave at 5:30. That's non-negotiable. Most people would adjust their schedule for a 40% pay increase. I'm not most people." Clearly. Victoria closed the file, keeping her voice level but firm. "Help me understand, Mr. Hayes. You're intelligent, capable, underutilized in your current position. You could be making significantly more money, building a career, advancing within this company. Instead, you're stagnant, by choice. Why?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and Victoria saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Exhaustion. Not physical tiredness, but the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been carrying weight for too long. "Some of us have already found what we're looking for, Miss Sterling. Not everyone wants to climb the ladder." "And what have you found?" "That's personal. Your career choices affect this company. That makes them my business." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of tension in his otherwise calm demeanor. "With respect, Miss Sterling, my reasons for declining promotions are my own. I perform my job well. I meet every expectation. What I do outside these walls shouldn't concern you." Victoria wanted to argue, to push harder, but something in his tone warned her not to. She'd gotten more information than she expected, even if it wasn't the answer she wanted. Marcus Hayes had priorities beyond his career, priorities important enough to sacrifice financial security and professional advancement. But he wasn't going to tell her what they were. "That's all, Mr. Hayes. You're dismissed." He stood, giving a slight nod, and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Victoria spoke again. "For what it's worth, I respect loyalty, even when I don't understand it." Marcus paused, his back to her, then continued out without responding. Victoria sat alone in her office as the afternoon light slanted through her windows, painting everything in shades of amber. She'd learned something today, even if it wasn't what she'd intended. Marcus Hayes was protecting something Someone, maybe. And that protection mattered more to him than anything Sterling Financial could offer. She pulled up his emergency contact information on her computer. The form was sparse. No spouse listed, no parents, no siblings. Just a single entry under primary contact. Emma Hayes, daughter, age 7, and a phone number for Riverside Elementary School. Below that, a secondary contact. Margaret Chen, neighbor, with a local address. Victoria stared at the screen. Daughter, 7 years old. Marcus Hayes was a father. The pieces started falling into place. The 5:30 departure, the refusal to work late, the complete absence of social engagement. He wasn't being antisocial or difficult. He was being a parent. She closed the file and sat back in her chair, feeling something uncomfortably close to shame. She'd been so focused on the mystery of Marcus Hayes that she'd never considered the simplest explanation. He had a child who needed him home at a specific time, every single day. But that raised new questions. Where was the child's mother? The emergency form listed no spouse. Was Marcus divorced? Widowed? Single father by choice or circumstance? Victoria glanced at the clock. 5:15. In 10 minutes, Marcus would leave this building and drive to whatever life he'd built outside these walls. A life he kept completely separate from his work, as if the two couldn't coexist. She thought about her own life. 31 years old, CEO of a mid-sized financial firm, living in a downtown apartment that cost more per month than some people made in a year. She dated occasionally, casual relationships with successful men who fit into her world without demanding too much space. She had friends, or at least people she had drinks with once a month. She had her career, her ambition, her 5-year plan. But she'd never loved anyone enough to leave work at 5:30. The thought sat heady in her chest, uninvited and uncomfortable. That evening, Victoria drove home through rush-hour traffic, her mind still circling around Marcus Hayes and his mysterious devotion to being home by 6. She passed a elementary school, its playground empty now, and wondered if that's where Emma went. Wondered what she looked like, whether she had her father's quiet intensity or something lighter, more open. Victoria had never wanted children. The idea of being responsible for another human's entire existence terrified her in ways that corporate board meetings never could. But she understood duty. She understood commitment. And Marcus Hayes' unwavering commitment to his 5:30 departure spoke to something deeper than simple preference. The next morning, Wednesday, Victoria implemented a new policy. She announced it in the weekly staff meeting, her voice carrying across the conference room with practiced authority. Effective immediately, Sterling Financial will be hosting a Family Day event this Saturday. Employees are encouraged to bring their children, partners, or other family members to the office. We'll have activities for kids, tours of the facility, and lunch provided. I want to know the people behind the work we do here. Murmurs rippled through the room. Janet looked pleased. The department heads exchanged glances, some enthusiastic, others wary. Victoria's eyes found Marcus in the back row. His expression remained neutral, but his fingers tapped once against his knee before he stilled them. Attendance is voluntary, of course, but I hope to see as many of you there as possible. We're not just colleagues, we're a community. After the meeting, employees filed out, chattering about the surprise announcement. Marcus moved with the crowd, but Victoria called out before he reached the door. Mr. Hayes? A word. He stopped, waiting as the others left. When they were alone, Victoria stepped closer, keeping her tone casual. I hope we'll see you and Emma on Saturday. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. You looked at my emergency contacts. I did. It's part of reviewing employee files. Emma's 7. She doesn't need to see where I work. Or you don't want your colleagues to know about her. Marcus's jaw tightened, the most emotion Victoria had seen from him. My daughter is not office gossip material. I agree. She's your family. That's something to be proud of, not hidden. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. I keep my work and my home life separate, because the moment people here know I have a child, I become different to them. I'm not just Marcus, who's good with systems. I'm Marcus, who has to leave early, who can't stay late, who chooses his kid over the company. I've seen it happen. The understanding smiles that mean they've already written you off. The promotions that go to people without obligations. I learned a long time ago that being invisible is safer than being seen. The words hit Victoria harder than she expected. She built her career on being seen, on making sure everyone knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. The idea of deliberately hiding, of making yourself smaller to avoid judgment, felt foreign and sad in equal measure. You're not invisible to me. That's what worries me. He left before she could respond, and Victoria stood alone in the empty conference room, wondering what kind of pain taught someone to hide the most important part of their life. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures mild enough that Victoria opened the office building's outdoor courtyard for the family day event. By 10 in the morning, the place was crawling with children, their laughter echoing off the glass and steel in ways that made the sterile corporate environment feel suddenly alive. Victoria circulated through the crowd, shaking hands with partners and spouses, kneeling down to talk to shy kids clutching their parents' legs. She was good at this, the social performance of leadership. But her attention kept drifting to the entrance, watching for Marcus. He arrived at 10:45, holding the hand of a small girl with blonde hair pulled into a ponytail. Emma wore a yellow dress with white flowers, white sneakers, and carried a small backpack shaped like a ladybug. She looked up at the building with wide eyes, clearly nervous. Victoria watched as Marcus knelt beside his daughter, speaking quietly to her. Emma nodded, squeezing his hand tighter. Then they walked into the courtyard together, and Victoria felt something shift in her understanding of Marcus Hayes. He moved differently with his daughter beside him. Still careful, still measured, but there was a softness in his expression she'd never seen at work. He pointed to different parts of the building, explaining something that made Emma giggle. When a colleague's child ran past too quickly, Marcus's hand went protectively to Emma's shoulder, a gesture so natural it was clearly instinctive. Victoria gave them space, letting them explore on their own terms. She watched as Emma approached the snack table, her eyes going wide at the selection of cookies and juice boxes. Marcus let her pick 3 cookies, then gently reminded her to save room for lunch. Emma nodded seriously, as if this was important information. An hour passed before Victoria finally approached them. They were standing by the reflecting pool in the courtyard's center, Emma pointing at the fish swimming beneath the surface. They're koi. Victoria kept her voice gentle, addressing Emma directly. They're almost 20 years old. Some of them have been here since before the building was finished. Emma looked up at her, and Victoria saw intelligence in those young eyes. How do you know how old they are? The facilities manager keeps records. He names them too. That big orange one is called Sunshine. Emma smiled, a gap visible where she'd lost a tooth. That's a good name. I think so too. Victoria extended her hand. I'm Victoria Sterling. I work with your dad. Emma shook her hand with surprising formality. I'm Emma Hayes. My dad says you're the CEO. That means you're the boss of everyone. Something like that. He also says you ask hard questions, but you listen to the answers. Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was watching this interaction with barely concealed tension. Your dad is very observant. He's smart. Emma said it with complete certainty, the way children did when stating obvious facts. People don't always see it, but he is. He fixes things nobody else can fix. I've noticed that too. They stood together for a moment, watching the koi drift through the clear water. Then Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, can I go play on the lawn? Those kids have bubbles. Marcus glanced at the group of children blowing bubbles under a tree, supervised by several parents. Stay where I can see you, and be careful. I will. Emma ran off, her ladybug backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Marcus and Victoria stood alone by the pool, the sounds of the party muted by distance and the gentle splash of the fountain. "She's wonderful." Victoria meant it. "She's everything." The simple statement carried weight that filled the space between them. Victoria looked at Marcus's profile, the way his eyes tracked Emma's every movement, even as he pretended to watch the fish. "How long have you been raising her alone?" Marcus was quiet for so long that Victoria thought he might not answer. Then, softly, 4 years. Since she was 3. "That's when you started at Sterling?" 3 weeks after. I needed stable income, benefits, predictable hours. Sterling offered all of that. "And you've been doing it alone this whole time?" "I have a neighbor who helps sometimes. Emergency backup, but yes, mostly alone." Victoria wanted to ask about Emma's mother, about what had happened 4 years ago that left Marcus a single father with a 3-year-old daughter, but the pain in his voice when he said 4 years told her that story wasn't ready to be shared. "She's lucky to have you." Marcus's expression flickered, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face before he locked it down again. "I'm lucky to have her." They watched Emma join the bubble game, her laughter carrying across the courtyard. One of the other children, a boy about Emma's age, showed her how to make giant bubbles with a special wand. Emma tried, her face scrunched in concentration, and when a huge bubble formed and floated away, she jumped up and down with delight. "She doesn't know." Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "She doesn't know how close we came to losing everything." Before Victoria could ask what he meant, Emma came running back, her cheeks flushed and her ponytail askew. "Daddy! Miss Victoria! Come see! They have face painting!" Marcus let Emma pull him toward the face painting station, and Victoria followed, something stirring in her chest that felt uncomfortably like longing. Not for a child of her own exactly, but for the kind of love that made someone willing to be invisible if it meant keeping their child safe. The face painter was one of the accounting department's partners, a woman with a talent for intricate designs. Emma chose a butterfly, yellow and white, to match her dress. She sat perfectly still while the woman worked, occasionally glancing at Marcus to make sure he was watching. "You're very brave," the woman said as she added the final touches. "Most kids wiggle." "My dad says being still is a skill. He taught me." Smart dad. When the butterfly was complete, Emma ran to Marcus, tilting her face up so he could admire it. "Do you like it?" "It's perfect. Just like you." Emma beamed, then turned to Victoria. "Do you want one? She's really good." Victoria found herself saying yes before she could think better of it. She sat in the chair, feeling slightly ridiculous as a grown woman getting her face painted at a corporate event. The artist worked quickly, creating a small design on Victoria's cheek. A single rose in red and black. "Beautiful," Marcus said quietly, and Victoria wasn't entirely sure he was talking about the face paint. They ate lunch together, the 3 of them at a picnic table under a broad oak tree. Emma chattered between bites of her sandwich, telling Victoria about her school, her best friend Sophie, her teacher Miss Rodriguez, who let them have a class pet hamster named Mr. Whiskers. "Dad says I can have a pet when we move to a bigger place. Right now our apartment doesn't allow animals except fish, and fish are boring." Marcus cleared his throat. "Emma..." "It's okay, Daddy. Miss Victoria seems nice. She's not like the mean people at your work who don't remember your name." Victoria's chest tightened. "People don't remember your dad's name?" "Sometimes they call him Mark or Matthew. Once someone called him Martin for a whole month. Dad didn't correct them. He said it didn't matter." Marcus looked uncomfortable, his sandwich forgotten. "Emma, that's not..." "But it does matter!" Emma's voice rose slightly, passion breaking through her usual politeness. "You matter, Daddy. You fix everything and help everyone, and they should know your name." Marcus reached across the table, covering Emma's small hand with his. Hey, it's okay. I don't need everyone to know my name. I just need you to know it. Emma's eyes welled up, and Victoria realized this wasn't just about names. This was about something deeper, something that had been building in this 7-year-old's awareness of her father's place in the world. The kids at school talk about their parents' jobs. They say their moms and dads are important. And I want to tell them you're important too, but I don't know how to explain what you do. Marcus pulled Emma into a hug, and Victoria looked away, giving them privacy in this public moment. When they separated, Marcus wiped Emma's eyes with a napkin. I fix computer systems. When something breaks and people can't do their work, I figure out what's wrong and make it right again. It's not glamorous, but it matters. And you know what matters even more? What? Being your dad. That's the most important job I'll ever have. Emma nodded, sniffling a little, then threw her arms around Marcus's neck. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in this world. Victoria excused herself, suddenly needing distance from the intensity of what she'd just witnessed. She walked back into the building, finding an empty conference room on the second floor. She stood at the window, looking down at the courtyard where Marcus and Emma still sat under the tree, Emma's head resting against her father's shoulder. Victoria had spent 6 months as CEO, learning everything about Sterling Financial's operations, its revenue streams, its market position. She'd analyzed data, restructured departments, implemented new efficiency protocol. She thought she'd understood this company, but she'd missed the human cost of corporate invisibility. She'd missed Marcus Hayes working himself to exhaustion while colleagues forgot his name. She'd missed the 7-year-old girl who needed her father home by 6 because she'd already lost one parent and couldn't bear the thought of losing another. Victoria pressed her forehead against the cool glass, feeling something crack open inside her chest. She was 31 years old. She'd dated men who looked good on paper but felt hollow in practice. She'd ended relationships the moment they interfered with her career trajectory. She told herself that love could wait, that success had to come first, that she had time. But watching Marcus with Emma, seeing the way he'd built his entire life around being present for his daughter, Victoria realized she'd never loved anyone enough to sacrifice even an hour. She'd never chosen another person over her own ambition. She'd never even been tempted to. What did that say about her? A knock on the conference room door pulled her from her thoughts. Marcus stood in the doorway, alone. Emma's with Janet, making paper airplanes. I wanted to... He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Thank you. For today. For including her. She's been excited about it all week. She's remarkable, Marcus. You've done an incredible job raising her. I'm just trying not to screw her up too badly. You're doing more than that. She's kind, intelligent, thoughtful. That doesn't happen by accident. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, and for the first time, Victoria saw real vulnerability in his expression. After her mother died, I didn't know if I could do this. Be enough for her, give her what she needed. I still don't know most days. Her mother died? Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. Sarah was gone before the ambulance arrived. Emma was 3, too young to really understand death, but old enough to know her mother wasn't coming back. Victoria's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. It's been 4 years. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days, it feels like a different life entirely. Marcus looked toward the courtyard, though he couldn't see Emma from this angle. People kept telling me it would get easier, that time heals. But it doesn't, not really. You just learn to carry it differently. Is that why you keep your work life separate? To protect Emma from people's pity? From being the sad kid whose mom died? From colleagues who'd treat me differently if they knew? Marcus's voice was steady but firm. I learned early that being a single father changes how people see you at work. They assume you're less committed, less available, less valuable. So I became invisible instead. Showed up, did exceptional work, left on time. If they don't see me as a person, they can't judge me as a parent. Victoria understood, finally, what she'd been missing. Marcus hadn't made himself invisible out of shyness or antisocial tendency. He'd done it as protection, as survival, as the only way he could maintain the stability Emma needed while still keeping a job that paid the bills. You shouldn't have to hide. Maybe not, but it works. Emma has a home, food, clothes, stability. She goes to a good school. We're making it. That's what matters. At what cost to you? Marcus smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I stopped counting that cost a long time ago. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them heavy with things unsaid. Then Emma's voice echoed from the hallway, calling for her dad, and the spell broke. Marcus straightened, slipping back into his carefully controlled demeanor. I should go. Thank you again for today. He left before Victoria could respond, and she watched him disappear down the hallway toward his daughter's voice. Something had shifted between them in this conversation. Some barrier had thinned. But Victoria didn't know what to do with that shift, or whether Marcus even wanted her to do anything at all. The family day event ended at 3. Victoria watched employees depart with their families, children tired and happy, parents carrying bags of leftover cookies and commemorative Sterling Financial water bottles. Marcus and Emma left at 3:15, Emma waving goodbye to all the new friends she'd made. Victoria stayed late, as she always did, reviewing reports and answering emails. But her mind kept drifting to Marcus's words. I stopped counting that cost a long time ago. What had it cost him? 4 years of raising a daughter alone. 4 years of hiding his entire personal life from colleagues. 4 years of leaving at 5:30 precisely because Emma needed him. Because he'd promised himself after Sarah's death that his daughter would never feel alone. Victoria thought about her own father, a corporate executive who'd missed most of her childhood in pursuit of the next promotion. She remembered ballet recitals where he didn't show, science fairs where her mother came alone, birthdays celebrated days late because of business trips. Her father had been successful by every measurable metric, but he'd been absent in the ways that actually mattered. Marcus Hayes had chosen differently. He'd sacrificed advancement, recognition, financial security, all the things Victoria had spent her adult life chasing, to be present for his daughter. Every single day, without fail. That night, alone in her downtown apartment, Victoria stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror and asked herself a question she'd never seriously considered. If she had a child, would she make the same choice Marcus made? Could she walk away from ambition to be present for someone who needed her? She didn't know the answer, and that uncertainty felt like failure. Monday morning arrived with rain hammering against the windows of Sterling Financial, the kind of persistent downpour that turned the city gray and made everyone irritable. Victoria reached the office at 6:30, her usual time, and found Marcus already at his desk on the 3rd floor. His computer screen glowed in the dim pre-dawn light, his fingers moving across the keyboard with focused intensity. She stopped by the coffee station on his floor, pouring 2 cups, black, no sugar, for both of them. She'd learned that detail about herself recently, a small shift in preference she couldn't quite explain. When she approached his desk, Marcus glanced up with surprise. "Miss Sterling, you're here early." "So are you." Victoria set 1 cup beside his keyboard. "Thought you might need this." Marcus stared at the coffee, then at her face. Something unreadable passed through his expression before he wrapped his hands around the cup. "Thank you. Emma get off to school okay?" Bus picked her up at 7:40. She was excited because they're starting a unit on ocean animals today. Apparently, sharks are very important when you're 7. The corner of Victoria's mouth lifted. "I remember that phase. I wanted to be a marine biologist until I was 12. What changed? I discovered I got seasick on boats. Marcus's laugh was quiet but genuine, and Victoria realized she'd never heard him laugh before. The sound changed his face, softened the careful control he always maintained. She wanted to hear it again. I should let you work. Actually, Marcus hesitated, his fingers tightening around the coffee cup. I wanted to thank you for Saturday. Emma hasn't stopped talking about it. She told her teacher, her best friend Sophie, the neighbor who watches her sometimes. You made her feel like she mattered. She does matter. To me, yes. But having someone else see it, someone she considers important, it meant something. Victoria pulled over a chair from a nearby empty desk, sitting down so they were at eye level. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus's shoulders tensed slightly, but he nodded. How do you do it? Raise a child alone, work full-time, manage everything without... She paused, searching for the right words. Without breaking. Who says I haven't broken? Marcus took a sip of coffee, his eyes distant. I broke the day Sarah died. I broke when Emma asked me for months afterward when Mommy was coming home. I broke the first time I couldn't afford Emma's favorite cereal because I was juggling medical bills from the accident. I've broken 100 times. I just put myself back together before Emma wakes up in the morning. The honesty hit Victoria like a physical force. She'd spent her entire adult life perfecting the appearance of having everything under control, of never showing weakness or doubt. Marcus had been doing the opposite, breaking in private, rebuilding in secret, all while maintaining the performance of stability for his daughter's sake. That sounds exhausting. It is, but the alternative is worse. A system alert beeped on Marcus's computer. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting to professional concern. The client server farm is showing unusual traffic patterns. I need to check this before it cascades. Victoria stood, recognizing dismissal when she heard it. Of course. Thank you for the conversation. She walked back to the elevator, the warmth of the coffee cup still lingering in her palms. Something had changed between them on Saturday. Some invisible wall had developed cracks. But Victoria didn't know how to navigate whatever was growing in the space those cracks created. The week unfolded with strange new rhythms. Victoria found herself timing her coffee breaks to coincide with moments when she might cross paths with Marcus. Not obviously, not in ways anyone else would notice, but she'd developed an awareness of his presence in the building, could sense when he was nearby. Wednesday afternoon, the main financial database crashed 15 minutes before a crucial client presentation. Panic rippled through the office as people realized years of account data had become inaccessible. Victoria's phone lit up with frantic messages from department heads. She walked down to the third floor, moving against the current of anxious employees. Marcus sat at his desk, headphones on, completely absorbed in his screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code scrolling past faster than Victoria could follow. She approached quietly, not wanting to break his concentration. On his screen, she could see diagnostic tools running, error logs filling with red text, system processes being isolated and tested. Marcus pulled off his headphones, speaking without looking away from his work. Corrupted index on the primary database. The backup sync failed overnight, so we've got integrity issues cascading through dependent tables. I'm rebuilding the index structure manually, then I'll restore from the last clean backup point. Approximately 18 minutes until the system's back online. How did you diagnose it so quickly? Pattern recognition. I've seen similar failures before, just not at this scale. His fingers never stopped moving, commands being executed with precision. The presentation data is on a separate server, so that's safe. But the main accounting records need the primary database. If I can't fix this, you'll have to postpone quarterly reviews. Can you fix it? Marcus's jaw tightened, his focus absolute. I'll fix it. Victoria watched him work, fascinated by the transformation. This wasn't the invisible employee who kept his head down and avoided attention. This was someone in complete command of his expertise, solving problems most people couldn't even understand. His fingers moved with the confidence of a concert pianist, each keystroke deliberate and purposeful. 12 minutes later, the system hummed back to life. Data began flowing again, error messages disappeared, and the collective sigh of relief from the third floor was almost audible. Marcus ran verification checks, confirming everything was stable, then leaned back in his chair. Done. All data intact, indexes rebuilt, backup sync reestablished. It shouldn't happen again. Victoria had been holding her breath without realizing it. That was remarkable. That was my job. Most people would have panicked, called in outside contractors, blamed IT infrastructure. You just fixed it. Marcus finally looked at her, and Victoria saw exhaustion in his eyes that went beyond the immediate crisis. Panicking wastes time Emma doesn't have. The faster I solve problems here, the sooner I can get home to her. The statement wasn't accusatory or resentful, just matter of fact. Everything Marcus did, every skill he'd developed, every moment of competence existed in service of being present for his daughter. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, an understanding that went deeper than admiration. That evening, she stayed late reviewing the incident reports from the database failure. Marcus's solution had been elegant, efficient, and saved the company from significant financial exposure. Yet his personnel file contained no commendations, no recognition, no documentation of the dozens of similar crises he'd likely prevented over 4 years. She drafted an email to HR recommending Marcus for a performance bonus. Then she deleted it, remembering his words about being invisible by choice. Recognition would draw attention he didn't want. But surely he deserved acknowledgement, even if private? Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from a colleague inviting her to drinks downtown. She declined, as she usually did, citing work, but tonight the excuse felt hollow. She wasn't staying late because of work. She was staying because going home to her empty apartment felt lonelier than usual. Thursday morning brought clearer skies and an unexpected visitor. Victoria's assistant knocked on her office door at 9:15, looking uncertain. "Miss Sterling? There's a young girl in the lobby asking for you. She says her name is Emma Hayes." Victoria's pulse jumped. She was downstairs in less than a minute, finding Emma sitting on one of the lobby's leather couches, her ladybug backpack clutched in her lap. The girl's face was tear-stained, her yellow dress rumpled. Victoria knelt in front of her, keeping her voice gentle. "Emma, what's wrong? Where's your dad?" "He's at work, upstairs." "But I needed to talk to you, and I didn't know your phone number." Emma's words tumbled out quickly, laced with 7-year-old urgency. "Miss Rodriguez let me leave school early because I said my stomach hurt, but it doesn't really hurt. I just needed to see you." "Does your dad know you're here?" Emma shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. "He's going to be so mad, but I had to come. I had to tell you something important." Victoria glanced at her assistant. "Please call Marcus Hayes on the 3rd floor. Tell him Emma's here and she's safe, but he needs to come down immediately." The assistant nodded and picked up the phone. Victoria turned her attention back to Emma, smoothing the girl's hair away from her face. "Take a breath, sweetheart. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. But your dad needs to be part of this conversation." "He can't know. He'll say I'm being silly." "Emma, please, Miss Victoria, just listen for 1 minute. Then you can get my dad." The desperation in Emma's voice stopped Victoria's protest. She sat down on the couch beside the little girl, close enough to offer comfort, but not crowding. 1 minute, then we get your dad." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "The kids at school were talking today about Mother's Day. It's in 3 weeks. They're making cards and talking about presents and breakfast in bed. And Sophie asked me what I was making for my mom." Victoria's chest tightened, understanding beginning to dawn. "I told Sophie my mom died when I was little. And Sophie said that was sad. But did I have a stepmom or a new mom? And I said no, just my dad. Then Sophie asked if my dad had a girlfriend. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. I said no. But Miss Victoria, I want to say yes. The lobby felt too quiet, too exposed. Victoria was aware of her assistant pretending not to listen, of the security guard at the front desk tactfully looking away. Emma, I think you misunderstand. I don't. I see how Daddy looks at you, how he smiles when he talks about work now, when he used to just look tired. And I see how you look at him too, like he's important, like you see him when other people don't. The elevator doors opened and Marcus rushed out, his face pale with worry. He spotted Emma and crossed the lobby in 3 strides, kneeling beside the couch. Emma, what happened? Are you hurt? The school called and said you left early and... He stopped, registering Victoria's presence, the intimate proximity of their positions on the couch. What's going on? Emma threw her arms around Marcus's neck, sobbing into his shoulder. I'm sorry, Daddy, I'm sorry. I just wanted to help. Marcus held his daughter, his eyes meeting Victoria's over Emma's head. The question in his gaze was clear. What happened? Victoria stood, giving them space. Emma came to talk to me about something personal. She's not in trouble. But maybe you should take her home for the day. I'm taking her home right now. Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. Emma, we need to talk about leaving school without permission. About coming to my work without telling me. About... I know. Emma pulled back, her face blotchy with tears. I know it was wrong, but Mother's Day is coming and everyone has a mom except me and I just want... Her voice broke, the words dissolving into helpless crying. Marcus's expression shattered. He pulled Emma close again, his hand cradling the back of her head. Oh, sweetheart, I know. I know it's hard. I'm so sorry. Victoria felt like an intruder witnessing this private grief. She took a step back, intending to leave them alone, but Emma's voice stopped her. Miss Victoria understands. She knows what it's like to not have something everyone else has. Both adults froze. Victoria's mind raced through the brief conversations she'd had with Emma on Saturday, trying to remember what she might have said that led to this conclusion. Marcus cleared his throat, still holding his daughter. Miss Sterling, I apologize for this disruption. Emma and I will go home and discuss appropriate behavior. Marcus, wait! We've taken enough of your time. He stood, keeping one arm around Emma's shoulders. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home. Emma looked back at Victoria as Marcus guided her toward the elevator, her eyes pleading for something Victoria couldn't name. The elevator doors closed, and Victoria stood alone in the lobby, feeling like she'd just witnessed something break that she didn't know how to fix. Her assistant approached cautiously. Miss Sterling, are you all right? Cancel my morning meetings. I need an hour. Victoria returned to her office, closing the door and leaning against it. Emma's words echoed in her mind. I see how Daddy looks at you. She'd been so careful to maintain professional boundaries, to not let her growing awareness of Marcus affect their working relationship. But children saw things adults tried to hide. Emma had recognized something neither Victoria nor Marcus had openly acknowledged. The question was, what did Victoria intend to do about it? An hour later, Marcus returned to the building alone. Victoria watched from her window as he parked his car and walked toward the entrance, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. She gave him 15 minutes to settle at his desk before going downstairs. He was staring at his computer screen without seeing it, his coffee cup empty beside his keyboard. Victoria approached quietly, setting a fresh cup next to the old one. How is she? Marcus didn't look up. Embarrassed, confused, missing her mother so badly it hurts to watch. He finally raised his eyes to Victoria's face. I'm sorry about what happened. Emma doesn't usually act out like that. She wasn't acting out. She was reaching for something she needs and doesn't know how to ask for. She's 7. She doesn't know what she needs. Are you sure about that? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither wanted to address directly. Marcus stood abruptly, putting physical distance between them. I need to be clear about something. Emma is grieving. She sees other kids with mothers, and she wants that. But she can't. I can't. He stopped, struggling with the words. I can't let her attach to someone who isn't going to stay. It would destroy her. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Sarah didn't plan to die at 28, leaving a 3-year-old daughter behind. Life doesn't care about plans. The fear in his voice was raw, unguarded. Victoria understood suddenly that Marcus wasn't just protecting Emma from potential loss. He was protecting both of them from the vulnerability of hoping again. You're right. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I know I see you, Marcus. I see how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, how you've built a life around being present for your daughter. And Emma's right. I do think you're important. Marcus turned away, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. You're my boss. This conversation is inappropriate. Then I'm having it as Victoria, not as your CEO. It doesn't work like that. You can't separate who you are from what you are. Neither can I. I'm Emma's father first and an employee second. Everything else is just... He waved a hand helplessly. Noise. Victoria wanted to argue, to push past his defenses, to make him acknowledge what was growing between them. But Emma's tear-stained face flashed through her mind, and she realized Marcus was right to be cautious. This wasn't just about two adults with complicated feelings. A child's heart was in the equation, fragile and already scarred by loss. Okay, Victoria kept her voice level. I understand. But Marcus? Emma was right about one thing. I do see you, and I'm not going to stop. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding harder than professional conversation warranted. The elevator ride back to her floor felt endless, her reflection in the polished doors showing someone she barely recognized, flushed, uncertain, wanting something she'd never prioritized before. The weekend passed slowly. Victoria found herself thinking about Marcus and Emma constantly, wondering how they spent their Saturday and Sunday, whether they had routines and traditions, whether Emma was still upset about the Mother's Day incident. She drafted text messages to Marcus's work number and deleted them all, recognizing they'd crossed lines he'd asked her not to cross. Monday arrived with news that shifted everything. The quarterly board meeting revealed Sterling Financial was being considered for acquisition by a larger firm. The potential buyers wanted detailed reviews of all departments, including personnel evaluations and performance metrics. Victoria sat in the conference room, listening to lawyers discuss due diligence, and felt cold certainty settle in her stomach. Marcus's invisibility wouldn't survive a corporate acquisition. New management would review files, question unexplained patterns, demand explanations for employees who refused promotions and maintained rigid schedules. Everything he'd built to protect his ability to parent Emma would be exposed and likely eliminated. After the meeting, Victoria pulled aside Richard Chen, the head of the acquisition team. The personnel reviews. How deep are we going? Complete analysis, performance metrics, advancement potential, cultural fit with the acquiring company structure. They're particularly interested in middle management gaps and underutilized talent. Define underutilized. Employees with high performance ratings who've declined advancement opportunities, maintained lateral positions for extended periods, shown resistance to increased responsibility. The acquiring company views that as either incompetence being hidden by good reviews or personal limitations that haven't been properly documented. Victoria's jaw tightened. That's a narrow way to evaluate talent. It's efficient. The acquiring company doesn't want dead weight. They're looking for people committed to growth. After Richard left, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at Marcus's personnel file on her computer screen. By every metric the acquiring company would use, he'd appear to be exactly the kind of employee they'd eliminate. High performance, but no ambition. Reliable, but inflexible. Competent, but limited. They wouldn't see the single father. They wouldn't see the daughter who needed him home by 6. They wouldn't see 4 years of unrecognized sacrifice. They'd just see someone who didn't fit their model, and they'd let him go. Victoria picked up her phone and called Marcus's extension. "Hayes, my office, now." The line went dead. Victoria stood at her window, watching rain begin to fall again, steady and relentless. When Marcus appeared in her doorway 5 minutes later, she gestured for him to close the door and sit. "We have a problem." She explained the acquisition, the personnel reviews, the criteria that would flag him as expendable. Marcus listened without expression, but Victoria saw his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. "How long do I have?" "The review process starts in 3 weeks. But Marcus, there might be a way to protect your position." "I'm listening." "Accept the team leader promotion. Show advancement, engagement with increased responsibility. Give them a narrative that fits their model." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Accept the position that requires me to work until 7 or 8 every night? The one that includes weekend availability and irregular hours? That's not protection. That's choosing between my job and my daughter." "I know. But if you don't, you lose the job anyway. At least this way, you buy time to find something else." "There is nothing else." Marcus stood, pacing her office with barely contained frustration. "I've looked. Every position with the salary and benefits I need requires flexibility I don't have. Sterling works because my schedule is predictable and my performance compensates for my limitations. I can't replicate that somewhere else." "Then what do you want me to do?" Marcus stopped pacing, turning to face her with desperation breaking through his usual control. "I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I can't—" His voice cracked. "Emma's lost so much already. I can't take away the one stability she has left." Victoria crossed the space between them, stopping close enough to feel the tension radiating from his body. "Then we fight. We find a way to make you visible in ways that matter to the acquiring company. We document your value beyond advancement metrics. We nothing." Marcus stepped back, creating distance. "You've already done more than you should. This isn't your problem to solve." "What if I want it to be?" The question came out softer than Victoria intended, carrying implications she hadn't meant to voice. Marcus stared at her, something shifting in his expression that looked like hope and fear in equal measure. "Why? Why do you care this much about one employee you barely know?" "Because Emma was right. I do see you. And I can't watch you lose everything when there might be a way to help." "Help comes with strings. It always does." "Not this time." Marcus shook his head slowly, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "You don't understand what you're offering. The moment I accept help from you, I become obligated. I become someone who needs saving. I've worked 4 years to avoid that. Needing help isn't weakness. It is when you're all your daughter has left. She needs to believe I can handle anything, that we're safe, that I won't fail her. If I start accepting help, I prove I can't do this alone. And that terrifies her." Victoria wanted to argue that Emma would understand, that children were more resilient than adults gave them credit for. But she thought about Emma's tear-stained face in the lobby, the desperation to give her father something he seemed to need, and recognized that Marcus knew his daughter better than anyone. "Okay, no help you don't ask for. But Marcus, the offer stands. If you change your mind, I'm here." He nodded, then left without another word. Victoria returned to her window, watching his car pull out of the parking lot exactly at 5:30, as predictable as sunrise. She'd told him she saw him, and that was true, but she'd also developed feelings she hadn't asked for and didn't know how to navigate. Feelings that complicated everything and solved nothing. The next 2 weeks passed in tension that seeped through the entire building. News of the potential acquisition leaked, and employees became anxious, competitive, eager to prove their value. Resumes were quietly updated, LinkedIn profiles refreshed, networking lunches scheduled with competitors. Marcus continued his routine as if nothing had changed. 5:30 departure, perfect work product, zero social engagement. But Victoria noticed details others missed. The way his jaw tightened when colleagues discussed the acquisition, the exhaustion in his eyes that suggested sleep was no longer coming easily, the tremor in his hands when he thought no one was watching. On Thursday afternoon, the acquiring company sent 3 executives to tour Sterling's facilities. Victoria walked them through departments, highlighting key personnel and operational strengths. When they reached the 3rd floor, one of the executives stopped by Marcus's desk. "This is Marcus Hayes, one of our senior systems specialists." The executive glanced at Marcus's sparse, impersonal workspace. "How long have you been with Sterling, Mr. Hayes?" 4 years. Still in a specialist role after 4 years? No interest in management? Marcus's expression remained neutral, but Victoria saw the micro-tension in his shoulders. "I prefer hands-on technical work." "Interesting choice." The executive's tone made clear that interesting meant questionable. He moved on without further comment, and Victoria saw Marcus's hands clench briefly before returning to his keyboard. After the tour concluded, Victoria escorted the executives back to the conference room. The same executive who'd questioned Marcus pulled out a tablet, making notes. "The Hayes fellow. He's been flagged in our preliminary review. High performance ratings, but lateral career trajectory. Declined 3 advancement opportunities according to HR records. Is there a performance issue being concealed?" Victoria kept her voice professional, betraying nothing. "Marcus is one of our most valuable technical specialists. His expertise has prevented significant operational failures and saved the company substantial financial exposure. But no leadership ambition. That suggests limited potential. It suggests clear awareness of his strengths. Not everyone wants to manage people. Some prefer to excel at the technical work itself." The executive made another note, his expression skeptical. "We'll need detailed documentation of his contributions, quantifiable impact, cost savings, crisis prevention. If he's as valuable as you claim, the data should support it. I'll have that documentation prepared." After the executives left, Victoria returned to her office and pulled every system log, client evaluation, and incident report from Marcus's 4 years at Sterling. She worked past midnight, building a case for his value that went beyond advancement metrics. By 3 in the morning, she'd compiled evidence of 12 major crises prevented, estimated cost savings of over $2 million, and client satisfaction scores consistently above 95%. She packaged it professionally and sent it to the acquisition team, then sat back in her chair, staring at her computer screen. She'd just spent hours fighting for an employee's job, something she'd never done before. CEOs didn't advocate for individual contributors. They managed resources, made strategic decisions, maintained professional distance. But Victoria couldn't pretend this was about professional responsibility. She was fighting for Marcus because the thought of him losing his job, his stability, his ability to provide for Emma, it physically hurt. And that realization terrified her more than any corporate acquisition ever could. Friday afternoon, Marcus's computer crashed spectacularly. Not a simple malfunction, but a complete system failure that took out his workstation, corrupted his files, and threatened days of work. Victoria heard about it from Janet in HR, who'd fielded the IT help desk ticket. She went downstairs and found Marcus standing beside his dead computer, his face ashen. Other employees had gathered, offering unhelpful suggestions and speculation about causes. Victoria dispersed them with a look, then turned to Marcus. "What happened?" "Hardware failure. Motherboard's fried. IT says they can't replace it until Monday, maybe Tuesday." His voice was flat, controlled, but Victoria heard panic underneath. "I have 3 critical client reports due tomorrow. All my working files were on this machine." Don't you back up to the network? I do, but the backup process hadn't run since last night. Everything I worked on today is gone. Victoria checked her watch. 4:45. Can you replicate the work on another machine? Not in 45 minutes. It would take hours. Then stay late. I'll approve the overtime. Marcus's expression hardened. I can't stay late. You know I can't. Marcus, this is your job on the line. The acquisition team is looking for reasons to cut people. If you miss deadline on 3 client reports...
I know!
His voice rose, drawing attention from nearby desks. He lowered it immediately, but the desperation remained. I know what's at stake, but I can't call Emma and tell her I'm not coming home. I won't do that to her. Can your neighbor watch her, just for tonight? Mrs. Chen is visiting her sister in Phoenix. She won't be back until Sunday. They stared at each other, the impossible mathematics of Marcus's situation laid bare. He needed to work late to protect his job, but he needed to leave on time to protect his daughter. There was no solution that didn't require sacrifice. Victoria made a decision that changed everything. Bring Emma here. Set her up in my office with books or a tablet or whatever she needs. You finish your work. I'll stay with her. Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting that offer. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. And Marcus, the clock's ticking. You have 45 minutes to decide if you trust me. The word trust hung between them, weighted with all the complexity of their situation. Marcus looked at Victoria for a long moment, some internal battle playing out behind his eyes. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Hey, sweetheart. Something came up at work. How would you feel about coming to my office for a few hours? Miss Victoria will be there. A pause as Emma responded. Okay, Mrs. Chen's daughter will drive you. Pack your homework and some books. Love you. He ended the call and met Victoria's gaze. She'll be here in 20 minutes. Victoria nodded, already moving toward the elevator. I'll set up my office. You start working on those reports. Use my workstation if you need better specs. She transformed her office into something approximating child-friendly, cleared her conference table, set out paper and colored pencils from the supply closet, moved her personal laptop to the side. When Emma arrived, escorted by a young woman Victoria assumed was Mrs. Chen's daughter, the girl's face lit up at seeing Victoria.
Miss Victoria, Daddy said you were going to hang out with me.
That's right. Your dad needs to finish some important work, so you and I get to have an adventure in the CEO office. Emma's eyes went wide, taking in the space with appropriate awe.
This is your office? It's huge.
It is pretty big. And you know what? I never used that conference table for anything fun. Want to help me change that? For the next 3 hours, Victoria discovered things about herself she'd never known. She learned she was terrible at coloring inside the lines, but excellent at making up stories about the pictures Emma drew. She learned that second-grade math homework was surprisingly complicated when you had to remember carrying digits. She learned that Emma's favorite subject was reading, her least favorite was handwriting, and she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because animals couldn't tell you when they hurt, so someone had to figure it out. They ordered pizza from Victoria's phone, and Emma carefully ate only 3 slices, explaining that Daddy said always save room for breakfast. They played a geography game on Victoria's tablet, and Emma surprised her by knowing the capitals of 12 states. They talked about books, about Emma's friend Sophie, who sometimes said mean things but apologized later, about how much Emma missed her mom, but also felt guilty for sometimes forgetting what her voice sounded like. Daddy has videos on his computer. Sometimes I watch them and remember, but other times I can't remember if I remember, or if I just remember the videos. Does that make sense? Victoria's throat tightened. That makes perfect sense. Memory is tricky that way. Do you miss your mom? The question caught Victoria off guard. My mother's alive. She lives in Florida with my stepfather. But do you miss her? Like, wish she was closer? Victoria thought about her relationship with her mother, cordial phone calls every few weeks, birthday cards with generic messages, a Christmas visit she'd skipped last year citing work obligations. Sometimes. But it's different than what you're experiencing. Because she didn't die.
Yes, Emma nodded seriously, processing this information.
Daddy says different families look different. He says there's no wrong way to love people as long as you're there when they need you. The simple wisdom of that statement hit Victoria harder than it should have. Marcus had built his entire life around being there when Emma needed him, sacrificing everything else to maintain that presence. And somehow, without meaning to, Victoria had started arranging her own schedule to be there when Marcus needed her, even if he didn't realize he needed anyone yet. At 8:45, Marcus appeared in Victoria's doorway. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but relief flickered when he saw Emma asleep on Victoria's couch, covered with Victoria's suit jacket. Reports are done. Client ready. Uploaded to the shared drive with version control. He crossed to his daughter, kneeling beside the couch. Emma, sweetheart, time to go home. Emma stirred, her eyes opening slowly.
Daddy, we had pizza and played games, and Miss Victoria knows all the words to the songs from Frozen.
Marcus glanced at Victoria with something like amazement.
Does she know?
Victoria felt herself flush. We may have watched some videos while you worked. Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. Can we do this again? This was fun.
We'll see.
Marcus helped Emma stand, gathering her backpack and homework.
Say thank you to Miss Victoria.
Thank you, Miss Victoria. You're the best boss ever. Victoria's laugh came out shakier than intended. You're welcome, Emma. Anytime. Marcus guided Emma toward the door, then paused, looking back at Victoria.
Thank you. I couldn't have...
He stopped, emotion making the words difficult.
Just thank you.
You're welcome. Both of you. After they left, Victoria stood alone in her office, surrounded by the evidence of Emma's presence, colored pencil drawings taped to her window, crumbs from pizza on her conference table, the lingering scent of children's shampoo on her suit jacket. She should have been annoyed by the disruption to her professional space. Instead, she felt something dangerously close to contentment. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. Emma insisted I get your personal number in case of emergencies. I'm sorry for taking advantage of your generosity tonight. Victoria saved the number to her contacts and replied, You didn't take advantage. I volunteered. And Emma is wonderful company. The response came quickly. She likes you. A lot. That scares me. Victoria stared at the text, understanding what Marcus couldn't quite say. Emma's affection meant attachment, and attachment meant vulnerability to loss. If Victoria disappeared from their lives, Emma would grieve, and Marcus would have to watch his daughter hurt again while feeling powerless to prevent it. I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to trust that eventually. 3 dots appeared, indicating Marcus was typing. They disappeared, appeared again, disappeared. Finally, trust is hard when you've already lost everything once. I know, but maybe it's time to try again anyway. No response came. Victoria stood at her window, looking down at the empty parking lot, and wondered what she was doing. She'd spent her entire adult life building walls between personal and professional, maintaining distance that protected her from messy entanglements. In 3 weeks, Marcus Hayes and his daughter had bulldozed through those walls like they were paper. The scary part wasn't that her walls had fallen. It was that Victoria couldn't bring herself to rebuild them. 2 weeks had passed since the acquisition announcement landed like a grenade in Sterling Financial's Monday morning staff meeting. Victoria had delivered the news with practiced calm. Merger talks with a larger firm, due diligence process beginning soon,
Minimal disruption expected. The lie tasted bitter, but boards required optimism even when reality suggested otherwise.
Those 2 weeks transformed the office into a pressure cooker. Employees updated LinkedIn profiles during lunch breaks. Networking coffees multiplied. People who'd ignored each other for years suddenly became best friends, forming alliances against an invisible threat. Resumes were polished, references contacted, escape routes mapped. Marcus continued his routine as if nothing had changed. 5:30 departures, flawless work product, zero engagement with the collective anxiety. But Victoria noticed details others missed. The exhaustion carving deeper lines around his eyes. The way his hands trembled slightly when reviewing the consultant team's preliminary questionnaire. The hollowness in his voice when he told Emma goodnight over the phone after their pizza evening together. Victoria had spent the previous weekend building Marcus's defense. Documentation of 12 major crises prevented. Cost savings exceeding $2 million. Client satisfaction scores consistently above 95%. She'd compiled evidence so comprehensive that dismissing him would require willful ignorance. But corporations excelled at willful ignorance when it served their purposes. The interviews began on Monday morning of week 3, arriving like a reckoning. 3 teams of consultants descended with clipboards and tablets, conducting sessions that felt more like interrogations than conversations. Victoria watched from her office as employees were called one by one into conference rooms, emerging 30 to 90 minutes later with varying degrees of anxiety etched across their faces. Marcus's interview was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. At 1:30, Marcus appeared in her doorway. He wore his usual neutral button-down and khakis, but Victoria noticed he'd put more care into his appearance today. Hair freshly cut, shoes polished, posture straighter than usual. "I wanted to thank you for the documentation you compiled. Janet showed me the file you submitted about my work. You deserved proper recognition." "Maybe, but we both know this isn't about what I deserve. It's about what fits their model." Marcus stepped into her office, closing the door behind him. "I've been thinking about your suggestion. The team leader position. If it's still available after the acquisition, I'll accept it." Victoria's chest constricted. "Marcus, you said that would require hours you can't give." "I said that would require choosing between my job and my daughter. I've spent the weekend trying to find alternatives. There aren't any. So I'll figure out how to make it work. Find after-school programs for Emma. Ask Mrs. Chen to extend her availability. Sacrifice sleep if necessary. That's not sustainable. Neither is unemployment." Marcus's voice carried resignation that hurt to hear. "Emma needs stability more than she needs me home at 6. If working later means keeping my job, then that's what I'll do." Victoria wanted to argue, to tell him there had to be another way, but she'd spent the same weekend running scenarios, and they all led to the same conclusion. The acquiring company would eliminate positions that didn't demonstrate growth trajectory. Marcus's choice was between uncomfortable compromise or certain termination. "Okay, I'll make sure the team leader position is included in your post-acquisition role discussion." "Thank you." Marcus glanced at his watch. "I should prepare for the interview." "Marcus, be yourself. Show them the competence I've seen. Don't hide." Something flickered across his expression. Doubt, maybe? Or fear? "I've spent 4 years hiding. I'm not sure I remember how to do anything else." He left before Victoria could respond. She stood at her window, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon, and wondered if she'd just helped Marcus make a choice that would save his job, but break something essential in the process. The interview lasted 90 minutes instead of the scheduled 30. Victoria tracked the time with growing anxiety, imagining increasingly dire scenarios. When Marcus finally emerged from the conference room, his face was carefully blank, revealing nothing. She caught up with him at the elevator. "How did it go?" They asked why I've never pursued management, why I maintain rigid scheduling, whether I considered myself a team player or an individual contributor. I gave them answers I thought they wanted to hear. "Which were?"
that I've been focused on mastering technical expertise before moving into leadership, that my schedule reflected efficiency rather than inflexibility,
That I see myself as both, capable of independent work and collaborative problem solving. Marcus's jaw tightened. I lied through my teeth, and they knew it. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside, alone in the small space. Victoria waited until the doors closed before speaking. What did they really want to know? Whether I'm worth the complexity I represent? Whether someone who can't work late or travel for client meetings has value in their organization? Whether my personal limitations outweigh my professional contributions? Marcus leaned against the elevator wall, exhaustion breaking through his carefully maintained composure. They asked about my emergency contact information, why I listed my daughter's school, where Emma's mother was. Victoria's stomach dropped. What did you say? That she died 4 years ago, that I'm a single parent, that Emma is my priority. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, but Marcus didn't move. I could see it in their faces. The moment I said single father, I became a liability. Someone with divided loyalties. Someone who might choose family over company needs. Your family should come first. Tell that to corporations measuring value in billable hours and weekend availability. Marcus stepped out of the elevator, then looked back at Victoria. They're going to recommend my termination. I could feel it. I won't let that happen. You might not have a choice. The elevator doors closed between them, and Victoria rode back to her floor feeling fury build in her chest. She'd spent her career playing by corporate rules, accepting that businesses prioritized profit over people. But watching those rules threaten Marcus and Emma made the entire system feel cruel and arbitrary. She called an emergency meeting with the acquisition team, cornering them in the executive conference room at 4. I received preliminary feedback about personnel recommendations. I want to discuss Marcus Hayes specifically. The lead consultant, a woman named Jennifer Park with steel gray hair and sharper eyes, pulled up her tablet. Mr. Hayes, yes, we're recommending position elimination. His role can be absorbed by existing IT staff at the parent company's remote operations center. That's inefficient and short-sighted. Marcus's expertise is Sterling specific. He knows our systems intimately, has institutional knowledge that would take years to replicate, and maintains client relationships that drive retention. He also maintains personal limitations that make him unsuitable for the expanded role we're envisioning. The consolidated IT department requires flexibility, on-call availability, occasional travel. Mr. Hayes made clear in his interview that those expectations are non-negotiable deal breakers. Victoria kept her voice level, professional. He also expressed interest in the team leader position, which would involve oversight rather than on-call response. Jennifer's expression remained neutral. We reviewed that possibility. His lack of previous management experience, combined with his scheduling constraints, make him a poor fit for leadership. We need people who can be present when crises occur, not people racing out the door at 5:30 regardless of circumstances. He's been present for every crisis in 4 years. Check the logs. He's solved problems that outside contractors couldn't figure out. He's prevented failures that would have cost millions. In a role that no longer exists post-acquisition. Ms. Sterling, I appreciate your advocacy for your employee, but our job is to optimize the merged organization. That sometimes requires difficult decisions. The dismissive tone ignited something in Victoria that she rarely let surface. Difficult decisions that eliminate single parents, maintaining impossible standards to keep their children fed and housed. Decisions that punish people for having lives outside of work. That's not optimization. That's cruelty disguised as efficiency. The room went quiet. Jennifer set down her tablet, studying Victoria with new attention. This is personal for you. This is about recognizing value beyond arbitrary metrics. With respect, Ms. Sterling, we're not here to make moral judgments. We're here to ensure the acquisition creates shareholder value. Personal circumstances are unfortunate, but they're not our concern. Victoria stood, gathering her materials. Then I'll be taking this to the board. They approved this acquisition based on promises of minimal staff disruption. Wholesale elimination of key personnel violates that agreement. That's your prerogative. But understand, if you fight too hard for one employee, the board will question your objectivity, your ability to lead through the transition. Whether you're compromised, the threat was clear and calculated. Victoria could fight for Marcus, but doing so would paint her as emotionally compromised, potentially costing her own position. Or she could accept the recommendation, maintain her professional standing, and watch Marcus lose everything. She walked out without responding, fury and helplessness warring in her chest. The rest of Monday crawled past in a fog of anxiety and strategic planning. Victoria fielded calls from concerned department heads, reviewed preliminary consultant feedback, and watched Marcus return to his desk at 3:45, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 90 minutes. That evening, Victoria sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. She'd drafted and deleted 6 texts to Marcus, none of them saying what she actually meant. Finally, she settled on simple honesty. Victoria, the acquisition team is recommending your position for elimination. I'm fighting it, but I need you to know this might get complicated. His response came 20 minutes later. Marcus, you've done more than enough. Don't sacrifice your position for mine. Victoria, what if I think you're worth it? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. When the response finally came, it was a single word. Marcus. Why? Victoria stared at that question, knowing the answer would change everything. She could deflect, claim professional responsibility, or she could tell the truth that had been building since she'd first watched him read to Emma through a hospital room window that didn't exist but felt true in her memory. Victoria, because somewhere between database crashes and pizza nights, you became someone I don't want to lose. 5 minutes passed. 10. Victoria's anxiety built with each silent moment. Then her phone rang, Marcus's number on the screen. I shouldn't have texted that, she answered without preamble. It was inappropriate and Emma's asleep. I'm sitting in my car outside our apartment because I couldn't have this conversation where she might overhear. Marcus's voice was rough, strained. Victoria, I can't. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let someone in. Let myself want something beyond just surviving. Emma and I have a rhythm. Wake up, school, work, home, dinner, homework, bedtime. Weekends we do laundry and groceries and park trips. It's not exciting, but it's safe. Predictable. And Emma needs predictable after everything she's lost. I'm not asking you to disrupt that. Aren't you? Because the moment I admit I have feelings for you, everything changes. Emma gets attached. You become essential instead of peripheral. And if it doesn't work, if you decide this is too complicated, or I'm too damaged, or Emma's too much, his voice broke. I can't watch my daughter lose someone else who mattered. Victoria gripped the phone tighter. I lost my father to his career. He chose success over presence, advancement over attention. I watched my mother cope alone while he traveled and worked late and missed everything that mattered. I swore I'd never be him. You're not. Maybe not yet, but I'm 31, and I've never prioritized another person over my ambitions. I've never rearranged my schedule for someone else's needs. I don't know if I know how. The honesty felt like stripping skin off, exposing vulnerability Victoria had never shown anyone. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Emma told me something tonight. She said she prays before bed, something Sarah taught her when she was tiny. She prays for me, for Mrs. Chen, for her teacher. And now she's praying for you. Because, and I quote, Miss Victoria needs someone to see her too. Victoria's vision blurred. She said that? 7-year-olds see things adults try to hide. Emma knows I'm lonely. She knows I put everything into being her father and nothing into being anything else.
and she's worried about me in ways a child shouldn't have to worry. Marcus, I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But Emma's right. I've been so focused on not failing her that I've forgotten how to live. And you... He paused, and Victoria heard him take a shaking breath. You make me want to remember. The words hung in the space between them, weighted with possibility and risk. Victoria closed her eyes, making a choice that felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if she could fly. I'm coming over. Now? It's 9:30. Now. Unless you tell me not to. Silence stretched, then, 3rd floor, apartment 312. But Victoria, this is real. Not a corporate negotiation or a strategic decision. If you come here, you're choosing us. Both of us. Are you sure? Victoria was already grabbing her car keys.
Give me 20 minutes. The drive through nighttime streets felt surreal, as if Victoria was watching someone else navigate traffic and stoplights while her mind raced ahead. Marcus lived in a modest complex on the east side, the kind of place with numbered parking spots and a maintenance person who was never quite available when needed. Victoria found apartment 312 on the 3rd floor, its door painted the same beige as every other unit. Marcus answered her knock within seconds, still wearing his work clothes but barefoot, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. They stared at each other for a moment, the hallway fluorescent lights harsh and unforgiving. I don't have protocol for this. Victoria's voice came out smaller than intended. I don't date employees. I don't get involved in situations this complicated. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. But come inside anyway. His apartment was small, but meticulously maintained. Lived-in furniture that had clearly come from second-hand stores, but was clean and arranged with care. Emma's artwork covered one entire wall, colorful drawings tacked up in overlapping layers. Photographs lined the bookshelf, Emma at various ages, a few including a woman Victoria assumed was Sarah, smiling and vibrant and alive. That's her. Marcus followed Victoria's gaze. I keep the photos up because Emma needs to remember. Needs to know her mother existed and loved her and wasn't just a sad story. She was beautiful. She was everything. And when she died, I thought I died too. The only thing that kept me moving was Emma. 3 years old and asking why Mommy wasn't coming home. And I had to find answers I didn't have. Marcus moved to the kitchen, pulling out 2 bottles of water from the refrigerator. I built a life around Emma because I didn't know how to build one for myself anymore. Victoria accepted the water, sitting on the couch with its worn cushions and throw blanket featuring cartoon characters. How did you get through it? Those first days, weeks? Badly. I barely functioned. Emma's grandmother stayed with us for a month, helping with the basics. Then she left, and it was just us. I remember standing in the kitchen one morning, trying to make Emma's favorite breakfast, and I couldn't remember how Sarah made it. I broke down crying over scrambled eggs because I couldn't even keep my daughter's routine intact. But you figured it out. Eventually. Trial and error and a lot of mistakes. The first time Emma got sick, I panic-called poison control because I thought a fever of 101 meant emergency room. The first parent-teacher conference, I forgot to go because I'd mixed up the dates. The first time she asked why other kids had mommies and she didn't, I gave her some stumbling answer about heaven that probably traumatized her more. Marcus sat beside Victoria, maintaining careful distance. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because if we do this, whatever this is, you need to know what you're signing up for. I'm not just a single guy with baggage. I'm a father who's still figuring out parenting, who makes mistakes and panics when Emma has nightmares about losing me too, who sometimes locks himself in the bathroom and cries because I'm so tired I can't see straight.
And you think that makes you weak? I think it makes me human. But humans are messy. You've built a life around control and structure and predictability. My life is chaos held together by sheer stubborn will. Victoria set down her water bottle, turning to face Marcus Foley. My father died 3 years ago. Heart attack at his desk, working on a weekend nobody asked him to work. He was 58. I flew home for the funeral and cleaned out his office.
You know what I found? 40 years of performance reviews, achievement awards, promotion letters. Not a single photo of me or my brother. Not one drawing I'd made as a kid. His life's work fit in 2 cardboard boxes, and none of it mentioned the family he'd neglected to build it. Victoria, I don't want to die at my desk, surrounded by quarterly reports and zero evidence that I loved anyone. I don't want to become my father, so focused on success that I miss the actual point of being alive. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to be the person you and Emma might meet, but I want to learn, if you'll let me. Marcus reached for her hand, his palm warm and calloused. This won't be simple. Emma will have hard days when she misses Sarah and resents anyone trying to fill that space. I'll have moments when the past overwhelms the present. We'll argue about boundaries and parenting decisions and how fast this should move. I know. And work will be complicated. However the acquisition resolves, we'll have to navigate being together while maintaining professionalism. People will gossip. Some will say you're showing favoritism. Others will say I'm using you for job security. I don't care what they say. You will, eventually, when it affects your reputation and your authority. Victoria squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses from years of typing and stress. Marcus, I've spent my entire adult life doing what made sense, dating appropriate men, advancing my career strategically, maintaining perfect professional distance. And I've been lonely every single day. I'm tired of sensible. I want true. True is messy. Then I'll learn to handle mess. Marcus studied her face like he was searching for doubt, for the moment when reality would override emotion. When he didn't find it, something shifted in his expression, walls coming down, fear giving way to possibility. Emma will be awake in approximately 9 hours. She'll come out of that bedroom like a tiny tornado, demanding pancakes and asking 40 questions before I've had coffee. She'll probably interrogate you about your favorite color and whether you think unicorns are real and if you've ever been to Disney World. What should I tell her about Disney World? That we'll go someday. That's her dream. Sarah promised they'd go when Emma turned 8, but... He stopped, swallowing hard. I can't afford it yet. But someday. Victoria's mind was already calculating costs, planning logistics. Then she stopped herself, recognizing the impulse to solve problems with money. Emma didn't need expensive trips. She needed presence, consistency, someone willing to show up. I should probably go. Let you get some sleep before the tornado arrives. Or... Marcus hesitated, vulnerability naked on his face. You could stay. Sleep on the couch. Be here when Emma wakes up. Let this be real from the beginning instead of something we hide. The suggestion terrified and thrilled Victoria in equal measure. Staying meant commitment, meant Emma seeing her at breakfast and understanding this wasn't casual, meant no easy retreat if things got complicated. Okay, I'll stay. Relief flooded Marcus's expression. He found Victoria a spare toothbrush, still in its package, and a t-shirt to sleep in. The bathroom was tiny, counter cluttered with Emma's bath toys and training toothpaste. Victoria changed in the small space, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. She barely recognized herself. Makeup faded, hair loose, wearing a man's t-shirt instead of designer pajamas. She looked almost happy. Marcus set up the couch with a pillow and blanket, apologizing for the accommodations. Victoria stopped his apology with a hand on his arm. This is perfect. They stood close in the dim living room, streetlight filtering through curtains. Marcus lifted his hand slowly, giving Victoria time to step back. When she didn't, he cupped her face gently, thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay. Victoria's answer was leaning forward, closing the space between them. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like the passionate embraces Victoria had experienced with past partners. This felt careful and precious, like they were both terrified of breaking something fragile. When they separated, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I haven't kissed anyone since Sarah died. Are you okay? I'm scared and hopeful and guilty and excited all at once. But yes, I'm okay. He withdrew to his bedroom, leaving his door cracked open so he could hear if Emma woke. Victoria lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to. Not just a relationship, but a family. Not just Marcus, but Emma. Not just present complications, but future unknowns. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, who called once a month like clockwork. She ignored it, turning the phone face down. Tomorrow she could deal with explanations and questions. Tonight, she just wanted to exist in this small apartment, surrounded by evidence of a life built from loss and survival and stubborn love. Morning arrived with exactly the chaos Marcus had predicted. Victoria woke to the sound of small footsteps running down the hallway, followed by Emma's voice pitched with excitement.
Daddy, Daddy, there's a car in the visitor parking that looks like Miss Victoria's car.
Victoria sat up quickly, running hands through her tangled hair. Marcus emerged from his bedroom, barefoot in sweatpants and a t-shirt, heading toward Emma's room. He froze when he saw Victoria awake, a smile breaking across his face. Good morning. Morning. Should I? Victoria gestured vaguely, uncertain of protocol. Emma appeared in the hallway, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon cats. She stopped when she saw Victoria, her eyes going wide.
Miss Victoria, you're here.
Did you have a sleepover? Marcus knelt beside his daughter. Miss Victoria and I were talking late, so she stayed on the couch. Is that okay? Emma processed this information with visible 7-year-old thought. Because you're friends? Because we're more than friends, sweetheart. Marcus glanced at Victoria, seeking permission or guidance. Victoria stood, crossing to where they stood in the narrow hallway. Your dad and I like each other very much, and we wanted you to know that, because you're important, and this involves all of us. Like? Or just like? Like. Victoria couldn't help smiling at the terminology. Emma's face split into a grin so wide it transformed her entire expression. I knew it! I told Sophie yesterday that maybe you were going to be my dad's girlfriend, and she said I was making it up, but I knew it! Whoa, slow down. Marcus put his hands on Emma's shoulders. This is very new. We're figuring things out, so we need to take it slow and be patient, okay?
Can Miss Victoria make pancakes with us? Please?
Marcus looked at Victoria with apology and amusement mixed in his expression. You don't have to. I'd love to. If you'll teach me how you make them. The three of them crowded into the small kitchen, Marcus pulling out ingredients while Emma dragged a step stool to the counter. Victoria watched as father and daughter moved with practiced choreography, Emma cracking eggs with concentration while Marcus measured flour. Mom liked blueberries in hers. Dad likes chocolate chips. I like both. Emma looked at Victoria seriously. What do you like? I honestly don't remember the last time I had homemade pancakes. Emma's jaw dropped. Never? Not even when you were little? My parents weren't big on cooking. We had a lot of takeout. That's sad. Emma said it with such sincere concern that Victoria almost laughed. Good thing we're teaching you now.
They made a batch with blueberries and another with chocolate chips, the kitchen filling with warmth and the scent of butter and vanilla. Emma narrated every step, explaining techniques Sarah had taught Marcus, who'd taught Emma.
It was a chain of love and memory, and Victoria was being welcomed into it. When they sat down to eat, Emma insisted Victoria sit next to her dad. "So you can hold hands if you want. That's what grown-ups in love do." Marcus's ears reddened.
Emma.
"What? It's true. Sophie's parents hold hands all the time. So do the people in movies." Victoria reached under the table, finding Marcus's hand and lacing their fingers together. His grip tightened, and when their eyes met, she saw gratitude and terror and something that might become love given time. After breakfast, reality intruded. Victoria needed to go home, change clothes, prepare for work.
Emma protested, wanting Victoria to stay and play games. But Marcus gently reminded her that grown-ups had responsibilities.
Will you come back?
Emma hugged Victoria at the door.
Please? This was the best breakfast ever. I'll come back, I promise. And you won't leave like Mom did? You won't disappear?
The question stopped Victoria cold. Emma's face was open and vulnerable, showing the fear that lived beneath her usual brightness. This wasn't just about breakfast or pancakes. This was a child who'd learned that people she loved could vanish without warning. Victoria knelt, bringing herself to Emma's eye level. "Emma, I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life is unpredictable. But I can promise I won't leave on purpose. I won't walk away because things get hard. Okay?" Emma studied her face, 7-year-old wisdom searching for lies. Whatever she found satisfied her, because she nodded and hugged Victoria again before running off to get dressed for school.
Marcus walked Victoria to her car, both of them aware this was a threshold moment. Everything changed once Victoria drove away and returned to her CEO life, while Marcus went back to being her employee.
"How do we do this? At work, I mean." Victoria leaned against her car door, exhausted and exhilarated. "Carefully. Professionally, when anyone's watching. Honestly, when we're alone." Marcus touched her face briefly. "And we tell HR. Make it official so nobody can accuse us of hiding it." "That'll open us to scrutiny." "Better scrutiny than accusations of impropriety. We do this right, Victoria. Transparent and by the book." She drove away, watching him in her rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot, barefoot, hand raised in farewell. Her phone immediately buzzed with messages she'd ignored overnight. Board members wanting updates on the acquisition, the consultant team requesting additional meetings, her mother calling for the 3rd time.
Victoria answered her mother's call on speaker.
Victoria, darling, I've been trying to reach you. Are you all right?
"I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work."
Your brother mentioned the acquisition is causing stress. You should take a vacation. Come visit us in Florida. Get some sun and perspective. I can't leave right now. Things are complicated. They're always complicated with you, dear. You're so much like your father. All work and no balance.
The comparison stung more than usual. "I'm not Dad. I'm learning not to be."
What does that mean? Victoria pulled into her apartment complex, gathering courage. It means I met someone. Someone with a daughter. Someone who's teaching me that presence matters more than promotions. Silence on the other end. Then, cautiously, "That's wonderful, honey. Tell me about him." "His name is Marcus. He works at Sterling. He's a single father, raising a 7-year-old alone. He's..." Victoria paused, searching for words.
"He's everything I didn't know I was looking for."
"And the daughter? You've met her?" "I had pancakes with her this morning. She's remarkable." Another pause. "You've never been interested in children before." "I've never been interested in a lot of things before. I'm trying to change that." Her mother's sigh carried through the phone, weighted with history. "Your father made choices that cost him his family. I hope you're choosing differently." "I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying." After ending the call,
Victoria sat in her car processing the conversation. Her mother rarely mentioned her father's failures directly, preferring to maintain the fiction that his absence had been unavoidable rather than chosen. Hearing her acknowledge it felt like permission. Permission to build something different, to learn from mistakes rather than repeat them. She went inside, showered, changed into work clothes. The woman in the mirror looked the same as yesterday, but felt fundamentally altered. She'd crossed lines she'd never intended to cross, made commitments that terrified her, opened herself to pain she'd spent years avoiding. And somehow, despite the fear, Victoria felt more alive than she had in years. At the office, Victoria went straight to HR and requested a private meeting with Janet. The conversation was awkward but necessary, disclosing her relationship with Marcus and requesting guidance on navigating it within company policy. Janet took notes with professional neutrality. You understand this creates complications if the acquisition team recommends his termination. You'll be accused of bias if you fight it. I'm aware. And you're prepared to recuse yourself from personnel decisions involving Mr. Hayes? If necessary, yes. Janet studied Victoria with new interest. In my 15 years here, I've never seen you prioritize anything over this company.
I hope he's worth it. He is. They both are.
The acquisition consultants returned that afternoon, requesting a follow-up meeting with Victoria. She entered the conference room expecting resistance, preparing arguments. Instead, Jennifer Park greeted her with a tablet showing revised recommendations. We've reviewed the additional documentation you provided on Marcus Hayes, also conducted secondary interviews with clients he served. The consensus is that his institutional knowledge represents significant value. Victoria's pulse quickened. You're reversing the termination recommendation? We're proposing a modified role. Senior technical specialist with project oversight responsibilities, but no direct reports. Maintains his technical focus while providing leadership guidance. Flexible scheduling with occasional on-call requirements negotiated in advance. That's workable. It's conditional. Mr.
Hayes needs to demonstrate he can handle increased responsibility without compromising performance. First 90 days will be probationary. If he can't adapt, the termination recommendation stands. Relief and concern warred in Victoria's chest. This was better than termination, but still precarious. Marcus would be on constant evaluation, his every move scrutinized for failure. I'll communicate this to him. One more thing. Jennifer's expression sharpened. We're aware you've disclosed a personal relationship with Mr. Hayes to HR. That's appropriate. But understand, any perception that you're protecting him professionally because of personal involvement will reflect poorly on your leadership. The board is watching. The warning was clear. Victoria's position was now tied to Marcus's performance. If he failed, they'd both pay the price. That evening, Victoria waited until Marcus left at 5:30 before following him to his apartment. She knocked, and Emma answered with her usual enthusiasm, pulling Victoria inside for an elaborate show-and-tell of her school day. Marcus emerged from the kitchen where he'd been starting dinner, his expression questioning. Victoria waited until Emma was distracted with her toys before explaining the acquisition team's decision. Modified role, increased oversight, 90-day probation. It's not perfect, but it's survival. Marcus sat heavily on the couch, processing. 90 days to prove I can handle more responsibility while maintaining my schedule limitations, while being evaluated constantly, while everyone knows I'm dating the CEO who probably influenced this decision. I'll recuse myself from your performance reviews. Make sure everything's documented and impartial. That won't stop people from assuming favoritism. Probably not. Marcus looked at Emma, playing contentedly with building blocks, oblivious to adult complications. What if I fail? What if I can't handle the increased workload and you've compromised your position for nothing? Victoria sat beside him, close enough their shoulders touched. Then we figure out the next step, together. But Marcus, I've watched you solve impossible problems for 4 years while raising a child alone and grieving a spouse. I'm not worried about your competence.
I'm worried you'll break yourself trying to prove you're worth keeping. I've been breaking myself for 4 years. What's 90 more days? The resignation in his voice hurt. Victoria wanted to fix this, to use her position to make everything easier. But that would confirm every accusation of favoritism. The only path forward required Marcus to succeed on his own merits while carrying additional pressure. I can't make this easier, but I can be here when it's hard, if that helps. Marcus turned to her, exhaustion and determination mixed in his expression. It helps. More than you know.
Emma abandoned her blocks and climbed onto the couch between them.
Are we having dinner? I'm hungry.
We're having dinner. What sounds good, sweetheart?
Can Miss Victoria stay? Please? I want her to try Dad's famous spaghetti.
Marcus raised his eyebrows at Victoria. It's not actually famous. Emma's being generous.
I'd love to stay.
They cooked together, the three of them navigating the small kitchen with increasing familiarity. Emma set the table with careful precision, explaining to Victoria where everyone should sit and which fork to use. The domesticity felt surreal and right, like Victoria had stumbled into a life she'd never planned but somehow needed. During dinner, Emma talked about her day with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. Sophie had said something mean during recess, but they'd made up by lunch. Mr. Whiskers, the class hamster, had escaped his cage and been found in the reading corner. The art teacher had praised Emma's drawing of a family, stick figures labeled Daddy, me, and Miss Victoria.
You drew Miss Victoria as part of our family?
Marcus's voice was gentle.
Well, yeah. She's here all the time now. That makes her family, right?
Marcus glanced at Victoria, giving her room to correct Emma's assumption if needed. But Victoria found she didn't want to correct it. The drawing felt true in ways that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. That's very sweet, Emma. I'm honored to be in your family drawing. After dinner, after Emma's bath and bedtime story, Marcus walked Victoria to her car. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain that might come before morning. She drew you into our family. Marcus shook his head with wonder. That fast? You've been part of our lives for what, a few weeks of anything beyond professional? And she's already made space for you. Does that worry you? Terrifies me. But it also... He paused, searching for words. It also means she's healing, moving forward, accepting that our family can grow instead of just staying frozen around the hole Sarah left. I don't want to replace Sarah. You couldn't, and you shouldn't try. But Victoria, you're creating your own space, something new that doesn't compete with what was. Emma understands that better than I do. Victoria leaned against her car, pulling Marcus close. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. The acquisition, work scrutiny, learning how to be together while being professional. Are you sure this is worth it? Marcus kissed her, soft and certain. I haven't been sure of anything since Sarah died. Except Emma. But this? Us? I'm choosing to try. That's the best I can offer right now. Then we'll try. Together. She drove home through streets empty of traffic, her mind already moving toward morning meetings and performance metrics and the 90 days that would determine multiple futures. The path ahead was unclear, complicated, full of potential disasters. But for the first time in her adult life, Victoria was choosing the messy truth over the comfortable lie. And that felt like the most important decision she'd ever made.